Welcome back to the Google Workspace Update podcast from Strawberry 7. My name is Adam.
And my name is Adam.
We're here every week to deliver you all of the latest updates happening in the world of Google Workspace. This podcast is available in audio format from wherever you cast your pods and also in video format on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Strawberry7.
Coming up on the show today,
we've got 6 updates for you today. So we have updates to Google Meet, Google Sheets, Google Drive, another one to Google Drive, Admin, and finally Google Meet. So a little bit varied this week, which is very nice. As always, there is a link in the video or podcast description to the document that we read from. This document contains some more detailed information, relevant links, some lovely pictures, and even some moving graphics showing you some of these features in action. So let's get to it.
on with the show. Right, so I'm back, everybody. So thank you, Adam, for covering me last week. As you mentioned, our schedules were conflicting just a little bit. It was a bit difficult to pin us both down at the same time last week, so Adam very kindly filled in for me. But I'm back this week.
I'm amazed that we managed to pin our schedules down as much as we do, Adam, each week, so absolutely no problem at all. And the listeners, I'm sure, will be glad to hear your voice as well as mine.
And I'll be glad to hear theirs as well. Right, so very first update that we have for everybody this week is to do with Google Meet. More languages are available for Google Meet captions. So you can now use captions in Google Meet in Finnish and Hebrew. So you can use captions to view subtitles as everyone speaks during the meeting, but the captions are only visible to yourself. And note that because this is a newly supported language, it will be denoted with a beta tag as Google continues to optimize performance. And you can see Google's Help Center for a complete list of supported languages for captions in Google Meet. And Google has also removed the beta tag from many other languages as they have been validated and are now out of beta. So that's UK English, Canadian French, Thai, Vietnamese, Polish, Romanian and Turkish, and all of that is available right now to all Google Workspace customers as well as users with a personal Google account. And I've added a lovely link for everybody if anybody would like to learn more about using captions in Google Meet.
Great, thank you, Adam. That's really nice to hear. I mean, this caption feature is really cool, with it sort of translating between these different languages and putting these captions in. Lovely to see it expand to Finnish and Hebrew as well. I know that Google are big on expanding it to all of these different languages. Nice to see those ones out of beta as well. We talked about this a while ago when this was introduced, and we thought this was a really cool feature that could help people when they're talking in international circles. So very nice to see that. I think that's a really nice advancement.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we really like the captions. It literally is it's a great feature, and this is just expanding the diversity of who this is available for and which languages it includes. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Adam. What's up next, please?
Up next, Google Sheets. So you can now easily convert hyperlinked text to smart ships using the tab key in Google Sheets. So building upon the tab to convert feature in Google Sheets, when your hyperlinked text matches the text of a smart ship in Sheets, you'll now be prompted to convert an inserted file, people, calendar event, YouTube or place link into a smart ship. For example, if the hyperlinked text is a file name, Sheets will automatically recommend converting it to a file chip.
That's really clever that it can do it even just based on a file name. I think that's what's really impressive. So I don't know how far that goes, but is it in the moving graphic, they're actually showing this as a file name. But the only thing I'm finding a little bit confusing about this, Adam, and I don't know if you are as well, is when it's going in as 2024 Vision Deck, that's the name of the file. When it's going in before they convert it to a smart chip, it's already kind of blue and underlined. It already sort of looks like a link, doesn't it?
It does, yes. So it does not look as if, say, you've just typed in the name of a file and then it's just automatically detected that from your Google Drive. I don't think it does that. I don't think it does work that way. If it did, I can imagine that could be quite confusing, actually, particularly if you have multiple files of very similar names or the same names. I know across lots of our schools. So, for example, planning is a very generic file name that you'll see across the entire school in many areas. And so if they were to stick a planning folder or document into this, then it could relate to anything really.
Yeah, I think you're right. And as I read this again, it does say, for example, if the hyperlinked text is a file name. So I guess it has to be a link to begin with. But I think you're absolutely right that if they did that, it'd be a little bit confusing. But this is great. I mean, these smart chips are really, really cool. For anybody who's not familiar, Google Smart Chips is a feature that Google introduced quite a while ago, and it's just a way of putting sort of objects into things like docs and sheets and various platforms like that look a little bit neater than just straightforward links. So a good example is YouTube. Rather than having this great big huge long link, you put it in and then you convert it to a smart chip, and it instead just comes up with a nice little sort of chip, doesn't it, Adam?
So on that example of YouTube, it's almost as if it's been embedded, because then you can probably actually play the YouTube video from your document. You wouldn't necessarily have to go away to a different tab, a different window, to then go to the website of YouTube. You can access all of it directly from your document. So that's really handy for that. And as we mentioned, you can also add in like your calendar events or people chips as well. There's all sorts that you can do to really expand what your document can do, which can be really helpful actually, and equally probably actually look quite impressive to anyone that you're showing your document to as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a really nice little feature that Google have made, which is a bit unique to them.
I also quite like, I think the next big thing, or I think we may potentially see more updates, I say the big thing, this tab to replace command that you're using to do this. We're seeing that more and more, particularly with, say, predictive text as you're typing away or messaging away in Google Chat. I keep seeing the predictive text come along, and then you just press tab to then to insert that text. And I've seen it on, I think maybe like if I've added other links around, I've seen that tab to change across Google Workspace more and more. So I wouldn't be too surprised if we do see more updates related to that tab feature.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's a really nice sort of interface that Google have gone with that, and a really nice feature. For anybody interested in this, I definitely encourage you to check out the moving graphic here. So I think this is, what's the sort of rollout pace here? And
so this feature is rolling out right now to rapid release and scheduled release at a gradual pace. So that means potentially up to 15 days for feature visibility. This update is going to be available to all Google Workspace customers and users with a personal Google account. And I've added a lovely link into our document if anybody would like to learn more about inserting smart chips in Google Sheets.
That's great. Thank you, Adam. I love the sort of a gradual pace. It's like you roll it out, Google, but you take your time, It's like Google on cruise control. Thanks, Adam. What have we got next, please?
Up next, we have a Google Drive update. So, expanding Google Drive log events to additional Google Workspace editions. So this could be handy. So Google Drive logs, which is a feature that enables admins to access an audit and investigation page to run searches related to Drive log events, is now available for Google Workspace Cloud Identity Free and Cloud Identity Premium editions.
Okay, this is very, very nice to see, because anything that helps the admins is great in our book. As you've said many times before, Adam, we are admins ourselves. And I think it's nice to see that this is going to be expanded a little bit. So for anybody not familiar, because we've talked a lot about cloud identity sort of editions, and I think it's good to clarify what that means by these cloud identity sort of editions. These are like licenses. They're very, very useful, actually. They're licenses that you can assign to people in your organisation, but it's when they're administrators. So it basically doesn't really give them any features of Google, but it allows them to administer the admin console, if that makes sense. So a good example of that is, let's say you've got a education client, and we all know education budgets are tight, right? So they only want to license the faculty members who are actually going to be using the features of, say, Google Education Plus. What you can do is you can assign a cloud identity license to your administrator account, and then it will still allow you to sort of go in and administer that and have a user account that's set up to, say, IT admin, but not having to assign that full license, if that makes sense. Or same in business as well, without having to actually buy a license for that. So that's very, very useful for people to do that. And expanding these log events to those tiers makes a lot of sense, because those people are really going to probably be exclusively administrators because they don't have the other features.
I was going to say, yes, it's definitely going to be the admins out there that are accessing the log events. I wouldn't really expect the everyday user to do so. If they did and they happen to know what they're looking for, then great. I applaud them. Then why not? But I imagine that's generally a task that would be handed over to the administrators out there. And as you were saying, to do with the cloud licensing, it's great to have appropriate administration of your platform, and so then if you're able to grant that to the necessary people to help you administer everything and keep everything working the way that you want, or to go and look through log events when required, then that's great.
Yeah, without having to pay for that license, right? That's like the key thing, is like they don't have to. I mean, there is Cloud Identity Premium, and I'll be honest, I don't actually know what Cloud Identity Premium gives you, but the Cloud Identity, well, as it says there, clues in the title, right? Google Workspace Cloud Identity free. Those are free licenses that you can assign just to your admins. And like I say, they don't have access to they don't have access to Gmail or Docs or Sheets or anything like that. It's purely for administration side. So exactly as you say, Adam, you can assign those out to your admins as you need, but the key there is that you're not having to pay for a license as a business. So any business, again, as we always say, if anybody's listening with Google Workspace Business, or even if you're an MSP and you are in the situation where you're paying for a license for that administrator account, not using any of the other features like email or anything like that, then you might want to consider switching to a cloud identity license and saving that license cost, which, it can be fairly significant. If you've got a big organization, you might have like 10 administrators or something like that. Obviously, in security, you should only give people access to what they need. So you might have multiple administrators.
Less is more.
Yeah, that's right. And if you're paying for enterprise level, and it's like £40 a month per license, it's a significant saving over the course of a year. So definitely worth looking at if you want that. So these log events as well, just on a side note of that, they are great, really, really nice. And I still want to see Google expand these logs a little bit more. Not so much logs maybe, but maybe the searches. We saw a great update recently where they had that people search, so you could see who you'd shared files out to. But what I want to see as an administrator is I want to be able to go into, whether it's the admin console or Google Drive, and I want to say, right, show me everything that is shared to anyone with the link as a viewer. Show me all of that.
That feature really is the top of your Christmas
Definitely
list.
Definitely.
You've mentioned it a few times. If Google is paying attention, if anyone's listening, that is what he wants for Christmas.
Adam, Google hangs on our every word. So now the Google AI will release it just before our Christmas episode. So I'll look forward to that. But it will just be so useful, because you do just share stuff out and you forget about it sometimes. Stuff's sort of hidden away. It's very easy to forget about. And that would be a really, really great security feature if Google did that. So, this is really nice. When's this sort of rolling out then, Adam?
Okay, so this is rolling out right now to rapid release and scheduled release domains, but at an extended pace. So that means potentially longer than 30 days for feature visibility. And as always, I've added a lovely link to our document if anybody would like to learn more about drive log events.
Interesting, and it's taken them up to potentially longer than 30 days to roll that out. Must be some sort of complex thing in there somewhere in the background. Thank you, Adam. I think we've got another Google Drive update next, haven't we?
Yes, that's right. So there are 4 little updatelets for everybody this week, and this is the last one, which is also to do with Google Drive. So enhancing Google Drive usability on large screen Android devices. What about the small screen Androids? It's always the big ones.
They never get any love.
So, building upon improvements to the Google Workspace experience on large screen Android devices, Google is super excited to announce additional enhancements that bring tablet experience more in line with the web experience. So, specifically, you'll notice above the main dock list, users will now see a tappable folder hierarchy for their current view. This allows a user to keep track of where they are in Google Drive and easily navigate out of the nested folders. Per file data columns to show when a file was last modified and how much storage is used by each file. So that's definitely handy for everybody. And also, you get a lovely colour palette that matches the Google Material Design 3 guidelines.
This is great. I mean, I'm looking at these graphics here and I'm thinking to myself, this looks like Google Drive on the web.
Yeah, it's a very pleasing graphic. Yeah, as you say, it does kind of look very, very similar to the one on the web. Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, it's really, really close match. I mean, I'm looking at it and there's very little difference between the two now. So this is really lovely to see. And like we've said many times before, you know, Google really do like to bring these things to these larger screen and foldable Android devices. Nice to have some graphics in here this time, showing us what it does look like on these larger screen devices. So
I've just thought of a real difference. I don't know if it was ever mentioned. Maybe it's just always been a thing to do with the Google Drive app, but I've only ever really seen it in portrait mode, where it then has the icons along the bottom, whereas if you do move it landscape, then it puts the icons such as like the home, start, shared and files on the left hand side, which I just hadn't noticed before. But I think just having that orientation shift makes it look so much more like the web version.
yes, I completely agree with you. I was thinking the same thing, of them being over on the left hand side is so much closer to that. I wonder if it's kind of like we said before, it's a little bit of a shame that Google, whether they do it or they don't, I'm not too sure, but it is a little bit of a shame that Google don't expand this a little bit to those larger screen devices in the iOS landscape as well. So I think they're probably trying to keep it within, go and get our devices, you know, our larger screen devices. But it would be nice to sort of have that on the iOS landscape. But there we go. You know, it's really nice to see it in the Android environment. And it's very nice to see some graphics here as well. So I really like that. What's the sort of rollout pace on this then, Adam?
Okay, so this update is going to be rolling out to rapid release domains right now. Launch on to scheduled release is planned for November the 27th. So I think that's probably the day this podcast comes out, actually. And this update is going to be available to all Google Workspace customers and users with a personal Google account. And once again, there is a link in our lovely document if anybody would like to learn more about using Google Drive.
Lovely, that's great. Thank you, Adam. What have we got next, please?
So up next, this is a bit of an interesting update. Not to say that the others are not, but I was not expecting to see this update. But this one is for the admins out there. So, updates for managing iOS devices. So user enrollment is now supported. Purchase and distribute apps using the Apple Volume Purchase program. So you can now fully enroll your Apple devices through Google, which is not what I was expecting, but a cool feature. So Google is expanding mobile device enrollment options for iOS devices to include user enrollment. User enrollment separates work and personal data on iOS devices, giving admins control over workspace data on the device while users retain privacy over their personal data. Additionally, admins can use the Apple Volume Purchase program to purchase and disturbed apps. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to say distribute apps. There's a typo from Google there. They can use that to distribute apps in bulk to user-enrolled iOS devices within their organization. Managing how workspace data is accessed is a cornerstone of security. The new user enrollment option ensures end users can keep their personal data separate from their work data, while admins can ensure their users are using and accessing apps appropriately. Using the VPP, admins can efficiently curate a suite of work-related apps, which are both which can be both free and paid, for their team. This streamlined process not only simplifies the deployment of essential business apps, but also ensures that employees have access to the right apps they need to be productive and efficient, all while within the secure parameter of the MDM platform.
Okay, this is an interesting move by Google. So Google are kind of really now moving into iOS MDM territory. So yeah, this is interesting to see. We've seen Google not as much as this, but we've seen Google kind of drift a little bit in the iOS arena where you could do app restrictions based on iOS environments and things like that. So, for example, you could say within your app grant list, allow list or deny list, you could allow and deny iOS apps within there. So there has been a degree of that. But this is Google very much moving to iOS MDM, especially putting the VPP in there as well. That's a very interesting move. I think that this is so important in terms of the landscape of things like bring your own device and that sort of challenge that admins have when they're faced with these devices coming into the environment, just like the sort of challenges that we face where our users are wanting to use their own devices to access school data or, you know, company data. That's a challenge, right? How do you separate those two? How do you keep the two secure from each other? How do you stop that sort of overlap of data or a potential breach? And it can be as simple as somebody copying a whole load of text for a safeguarding issue or something like that, opening the mail app on their iPhone, pasting it in and sending it from their personal account accidentally. It seems like a minor thing, but the point is this, and for people who, I have heard people go, oh, what's the problem? This is the problem. Inherently, you can make a work account secure. There's certain things that you can control. So, for example, you can say, I want all of my users to have a password that's minimum of 8 characters. I want it to have a special character. I want them to have two-factor authentication. You can do that on their work account. The password rotates every 90 days. You can't do that on their personal account. That possibly makes their personal account more vulnerable to attack. So when that person sends that email that, say, got safeguarding information in it from their personal email, not only does that look unprofessional, but their personal account is possibly more subject to attack because they might be using a password that they've used for 5 years, a password that's been compromised, a password that's on the dark web. Then if somebody breaks into their account, suddenly they've got that safeguarding information. That's why it can be such a risk to end up with this kind of work-related data in a personal environment where you've got that kind of overlap. So that's why it's risky. Bring your own device is a security challenge for all admins out there, and it's very nice to see Google implementing some tools to help people keep those separated. I just want to say one more thing on this. If you're, again, an MSP listening or even a business, this is another thing that Google Workspace are bringing under their umbrella, and suddenly, do you need to pay for another MDM? Who knows? Maybe not. There's probably a lot more that an MDM does. We use Jamf, for example. I'm not thinking that we're suddenly going to throw all of our Jamf system away and put all of our iPads into Google, because Jamf does a lot of other really, really cool things that maybe Google can't do. It's much more than just VPP and enrollment. There's a lot of other cool things that Jamf do. But maybe this is something worth looking into, especially if you're just starting to introduce an MDM into your workplace. This is maybe something to consider.
Yes, absolutely. And it's definitely a step in that direction. As I say, so when I saw this, when I was reading through this update, it was very much giving the Jamf vibes that we use. Obviously, we're very, very familiar using Jamf as our chosen MDM for basically all of our clients, really. Google is not, obviously we use Chromebooks, we use Google devices, but for iOS devices it's always been Jamf, and so we're quite familiar with using things like the VPP and the Apple School Manager, things like that. But I was not expecting to see this coming from Google.
Yeah, absolutely. And Google's surprised us a couple of times with this sort of going into these arenas that have really been the exclusive area of third parties. For example, appointment scheduling in Calendar. It seems like a simple addition, but Calendly has built their entire business on that. And for Google to suddenly come along and say, oh, we do it now, and it's all integrated into Google. Oh, and by the way, it's part of your subscription. It's free, so you don't have to pay for it anymore. It's quite a big move when companies like Google do this. But this is cool. There's some nice graphics in here as well. Adam, I think you're probably going to tell people how to get started with this, aren't you, next?
Okay, so for the admins getting started with the volume purchasing program, so to begin with, admins will need access to Apple's volume purchasing program with their business manager credentials. It does only mention business manager. I mentioned Apple School Manager, which is the one that I'm more familiar with. I'm going to assume it'll work with both, but it doesn't actually mention Apple School Manager anywhere. It does only mention Business Manager, so take that with a minor grain of salt. So through the VPP, admins can purchase app licenses that can be distributed to their employees' devices in bulk, which is what we're familiar with as admins ourselves, and it is great. So, but for complete instructions on how to do that, you can access Google's Help Center to learn more about distributing iOS apps and Apple VPP and applying settings for iOS devices. So there's lots of links within our document for that. There's also several graphics showing several of the steps involved and give you a quick look on what Apple Business Manager looks like, and also a point of view from the Google Admin Console as well. So if you're an admin out there and you're interested in the Google side of MDM, definitely come and have a look at our document, see all of our links, and come check this out because it is quite cool.
There's a little bit about end users here as well, isn't there? So this is now getting into what the end user actually sees. I think it's just mostly graphics, isn't it? But
so getting started for the end users, the user enrollment process starts when a user signs in to an app for the first time or re-signs into an app. They'll be prompted to begin downloading the configuration profile, which will open in an internet browser with more instructions and information. Once the profile has been downloaded, the user will be directed to their device's settings to complete user enrollment. Okay. So reading that out loud, that clears things up a little bit, because that was talking about, and again, there was graphics demonstrating this. They have chosen an iPhone, which I just thought was a interesting choice. I would have thought something like an iPad or something like that probably would have. I'm sure it's all quite similar. Anyway, within the graphic, it does initially show you from the iOS settings app, but then what I just read out, that's saying when you go into an app, so for example, whether it's say the Google Drive app, then it looks as if when you go to open the Google Drive app, it will then ask you to sign in, which will then actually take you into your iOS settings and then ask you to kind of push out the profile from the MDM side of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think probably you need to sort of read a bit more on these links to fully understand this process, which, like you said, check out our document for all the links on this. But there is, I think, that process of bringing the device into the MDM, and then, like it says, when it downloads an app, it then goes, oh, hey, you've got to download this configuration profile. It would be interesting to see how easy it is to remove that profile as well, and what happens if you do. Like, for example, let's say you've installed you've sent the profile out to all of the devices, and you've set it so that you have control over erasing work data only, which I clicked on the link, I saw that is an option. Let's say your end user, disgruntled employee or whatever, removes the profile. When they remove the profile, does that remove the work data? Or can you configure that? Or do you have no control over it then? So it's little things like that which would be interesting to see, because obviously with us managing school devices, because with Jamf it's all done at the reseller level. When you actually buy the device, before it even gets to us, it's linked to our MDM. We have the ability to say, here's the profile and it cannot be removed. It's like these devices are bonded unless we do it from the central MDM.
And say if they did a factory reset, then it would just automatically push itself back in. The profile would redeploy itself automatically. The user has no control over that. It is it belongs to that organization until the admin does something otherwise. And so, yeah, it definitely is a bit interesting. So with that, I'm sure one of the settings that we would have deployed, as well as the one that would automatically push out the profiles automatically, I'm sure we've ticked settings to say the user cannot remove the profile and things like that. What this is talking about is just enrollment, but not much beyond that at this stage. So again, maybe there's going to be more updates coming out in the future. Maybe it will move a bit more towards Jamf. It'd be quite exciting if it does, actually. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's a bit of an evolving thing for Google, and either way, this is cool to see. It's nice to see Google doing this under the umbrella. I mean, it's good. If you can bring it all under Google, then all the better for management and everything like that, certainly. Whether you've got your kind of whether you've got your monopoly hat on and saying this is possibly going to get into the realms of a monopoly, and Google are kind of squeezing out all of these other MDMs. It's a bit early to say that, but it's certainly a risk of these bigger companies moving into these markets and things like that. And it is always healthy to have competition. But purely from a lazy administration point of view, it's great for it to all be under one umbrella, and a business cost point of view as well. Thank you, Adam. What's the rollout pace and availability on this, please?
Okay, so rapid and scheduled release. There is a full rollout, so 1 to 3 days for feature visibility, which started on November the 20th. So that this is probably going to be available to all the eligible Workspace editions by the time this podcast comes out. And it will be available to Google Workspace Enterprise Plus, Enterprise Standard, Enterprise Essentials Plus, Frontline Standard, Frontline Starter, Business Plus, Cloud Identity Premium, Education Standard, Education Plus, and non-profit customers.
Okay, so they did put some education in there, which is interesting. So thank you, Adam. What's the last update, please?
Okay, so the very last update that we have this week is to do with Google Meet. So you can now raise your hand with gesture detection in Google Meet. So up until now, raising your hand to ask a question in Google Meet was done by clicking the hand raise icon. Now you can also raise your physical hand within a Google Meet, and Google Meet will recognize it with gesture detection. So to ensure the gesture is detected, make sure your camera is enabled, always a good start, and your hand is visible to the camera and also away from your face and body. As an active speaker, the gesture detection will not be triggered, but when you're no longer the active speaker, gesture detection will resume.
Okay, this is quite serendipitous, actually, because just last night I was talking to my partner Will, because he runs a podcast as well, which he started after me. Such a copycat. But shout out to his podcast.
Read in between the lines for those details.
I take it as a compliment, Adam. What is it? Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. He runs a podcast. Shout out to his, which is Wizarding Wireless Network, which if you're into Harry Potter, then go and check his podcast out, because they're very, very funny. And he was saying only last night that they were trying to record and use some of these gestures on Google Meet, because they record in the same way that we do, and they were trying to use some of these gestures on Google Meet, and they just wouldn't work at all. And we were talking about how kind of random they are and how they don't really work very well. So these are the ones where you can kind of put your thumbs up and you get like little bubbles and stuff or something like that. We don't use them ourselves, but
quick question: had they turned the feature on?
Yeah. No, they specifically turned.
Just checking.
That's exactly what I thought. But no, they specifically turned it on each end, and they were specifically doing the gestures as well as one like this. I don't know if it's going to work on here or something like that. And no, it's not even working. Maybe I don't have the feature on though. But they were kind of doing things like that, and it didn't really work. So I think this is brilliant. I think this is great, as long as it works a bit.
If it works.
Yeah, exactly. As long as it works a little bit better than some of the other gesture controls that Google Meet have tried to introduce. Just another thing as well, I don't mean to get at the moving graphic that they've used or anything like that. It's actually quite refreshing for Google to use a moving graphic showing somebody in a more real world setting of using Google Meet. But this is really unusual for Google, because whenever we see these moving graphics of people using Google Meet, it's always like some crazy situation that we have never seen anybody kind of broadcast in, where they're in like this beautiful multi-million pound like Hollywood mega mansion or something with this gorgeous background and like perfect lighting, and the birds are tweeting outside and it looks like a gorgeous day on the coast and everything, which is great if your life's like that. But I don't think most people, this is a lot more realistic with what most people look like on Google Meet and what their environment looks like on Google Meet, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe she just needs to tweak that AI, automatically adjust the lighting setting just that wee bit. I thought you were actually going to say, because the moving graphic, she looks a little bit somber. Obviously, she is raising her hand because she wants to get some attention. It does look as if she wants to say, "Can I go home, please?" or something like that.
Yeah, well, again, more realistic, right, in a Google Meet. So
Yeah.
I like it. I like the moving graphic being built more realistic. I think that's great. So there is a moving graphic showing this nicely. One of the things that's really nice here, apologies if you mentioned this in when you were talking about the summary here, but what I like is when you raise your hand, it kind of comes up with that countdown timer saying, I'm going to initiate the gesture in a second, are you sure you want to do that? And then sort of goes green. So
yes, because I don't know, I don't know why you would, but maybe you're casually just reaching to get something off your shelf or something. So if you were to accidentally trigger the gesture, then you should hopefully become aware of that and cancel that.
Yeah, and another thing that people might be thinking, possibly, is they might be thinking, well, why would I raise my hand up and wait for this kind of gesture control to come up when I can just, with one button, click the raise hand feature? I'd say two things about that. Number one, that's great if you know where the controls are on Google Meet. But I've met with a lot of people who aren't that familiar with Google Meet. Now, yes, I know you could say, well, they won't know that gesture control is there, but they might kind of just...
They would instinctively do that anyway, because it's a natural thing to do.
That's it, Adam. Yeah, they might just like kind of raise their hand thinking, hello, can somebody see me? And then the system's going, oh, hang on, I'm going to raise your hand. So, yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Adam. That's what I was going to say.
It definitely keeps things more interactive and more involved and more engaging as well, because instead of just clicking a button like every however long it could be, then I don't think that's terribly exciting. Obviously, it's great to have those features and those options, but I think if you're physically being involved in the meeting, then I think that's definitely a lot more engaging for everybody.
Yeah,
really.
I agree. Yeah, and the other reason that's really nice to use this feature, or the other situation that's really nice to use this feature, is if your Meet window is kind of behind some other windows. So that quite often happens where I'll be in a meeting and I will be, especially if I'm sharing my screen or something like that, my Meet window will kind of end up behind some of the other windows and you don't necessarily know where it is. And if somebody's saying something, you think, oh my God, I want to ask a question, you could just raise your hand up, of course, and your Meet window doesn't need to be active, I don't think, for these gesture controls to work. It doesn't actually specifically say that, but I don't think it would need to be. And you just raise your hand, and then it doesn't matter where your Meet window is, the Meet system is going to kind of raise your hand for you. So those are the two immediate situations that I can think of where this would be really handy. And then exactly what you've said, Adam, with it being just a bit more engaging, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this is great. So what's the getting started on this, please?
Okay, so for the admins out there, there is no admin control for this feature, but for the end users, this feature will be off by default, and it can be turned on by selecting more options, then reactions, then hand raise gesture. You can also visit Google's Help Center if you'd like to learn more about raising your hand in Google Meet. So I actually went and had a quick look earlier in the week to find out if this option was going to be available to us. And so if anyone is not sure, the more options is basically the three-dot menu that you'll probably see at the bottom of your Google Meet, just next to the end call button as well. But from that menu, I do not have a reactions setting. If I actually open settings, then at the bottom there, I've got audio, video, general, captions, and reactions. So then reactions are there, but it doesn't include the the hand raise gesture just yet. We are on rapid release, so hopefully it will become available to us quite soon if we are in the alleged tiers, which I've not actually read just yet. I'm sure we would be. But we don't have that feature just yet. I wanted to test it.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I see exactly the same thing. When I click on the three dots, I don't see a reactions setting there immediately, but if you go to settings, there is a reactions part there. So thanks for pointing that out to listeners.
Possibly that's slightly different across different devices, but then again, Google should probably mention that.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, and equally from the graphic, it definitely looks as if they are on the web version of Google Meet. It doesn't look as if they are on an app.
Yeah, I agree with you. But have you noticed something else on this moving graphic, Adam, that I've never seen before? Do you see those little arrows next to the microphone and next to the video? I haven't got those. So I reckon maybe this is another little update that's going to come in the near future where you're going to be able to select the arrows next to your microphone or your camera and switch out devices on the fly in the Meet, which would be really, really cool. So they must
just
be on
like you can on all the other video meeting software. Yeah. Apparently there's other options available.
Yeah, I mean, it's like so I think Google have let slip a little extra update there in the near future in this moving graphic. I just noticed it there. So you heard it first here, listeners. But that's good to see.
Whenever I see a moving graphic, or to be honest, whenever I see a graphic that's come from somebody, I can't help but be a bit nosy, and I always look for the smaller details to see how much information can I actually take away from this image. So always be careful when sharing images with or screenshots with anybody out there. So on our Meet, it always mentions our name because we're in the meeting. That is missing. That is omitted from the example. Also, the name of the meeting itself is also omitted as well. So it's just a bit interesting. We also see other options on I definitely see on the bottom right hand of my Google Meet. So there's the Google Chat that you can have. You can see who's the participants that are in the meeting and things. There's just differences to what are on the graphic to what I'm seeing right now within the Google Meets that we're in right now.
If I had to guess, I think what they've probably actually done is they've cropped the image in, so they chopped those bits off of the far right and the far left. But it is a good point, Adam.
Yeah.
Possibly, I don't know, but that would be my guess.
Sneaky marketing tactics.
Yeah, and but that's interesting to see. I think Google have let that slip a little bit, but that's good. Don't panic, Google. It's good that you're showcasing this stuff. So yeah, good. Okay, so what's the rollout pace and availability here, please?
Okay, so rapid release, full rollout, so 1 to 3 days for feature visibility, started on November the 21st. Scheduled release, gradual rollout, so up to 15 days for feature visibility, is starting on November the 28th. And this update is going to be available for Google Workspace Business Plus, Business Standard, Enterprise Essentials, Enterprise Plus, Enterprise Standard, Enterprise Starter, Education Plus, the Teaching and Learning Upgrade customers, and Google Workspace individual subscribers. So it will be available to us, so I can have a good play with this next week when it actually becomes available.
Yeah, I was just thinking that is going to be available on our tier, so that's good to hear. Thank you for all of that information, as always, Adam. That's wonderful. And that is it, everybody. That's everything that you need to know about everything that's happening in the world of Google Workspace updates this week. Remember that this podcast is available in audio format from wherever you cast your pods, and also in video format on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Strawberry7. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
And we'll be back again next week with more updates.
Goodbye.
Bye.